Hey guys, I am Naya and welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, we're going to be covering budget decks. But I do want to cover 5 decks that I haven't discussed in the last video that I made where I covered 6 budget decks, which I think are still going to be incredibly strong and also good pickups moving forward into the Power of the Elements format. But I also wanted to make this video to sort of cover a couple other ones, so you have as many options as possible. And also before we get started, today is the 28th, it's 1 a.m. So officially for me, yesterday was the birthday of my channel. Like the first video I ever posted was on the 27th of July last year. I also made a community post. You maybe saw it already, but in case you haven't, I just want to say thank you one more time. After 1 year of creating content, and I'm like getting emotional even talking about this, I have never imagined to have such a positive response and for you to be just so nice and so supportive and just tell me and show me how much you enjoy the content. It genuinely makes me happy to bring it to you. I work incredibly hard to bring you consistent and good and knowledgeable and just quality content, and it just makes me so happy overall. And then seeing your responses, it even makes me happier. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, and I honestly can't wait for everything that is to come for this channel. So before I get completely emotional, I also want to thank my patrons, which are Dudley and also Project Mercury and Crimson. Thank you for your support, and if any of you want to support me on Patreon, you can always check the link in the description. Check out all of the other social media, sub to the channel. I'm getting a bit confused in this intro, but these are the things I wanted to touch upon. And before I completely just lose my head and start crying, we need to get into the video. And these are the 5 decks we're gonna be talking about today. So starting off with the first deck, it's going to be Marincess. If you had asked me, I don't know, a year back or some time back if I think Marincess is good, no, of course it's not. It's just very bad. And I also wouldn't say, yeah, it's going to receive amazing support. I just really didn't see it coming. I don't think any of us have. And it's amazing. I am so hyped for the fact that Marincess got good support. It's actually going to be a budget deck and a strong deck moving forward. And even right now, if we look at the results from the YCS, the deck was able to do well. It got to top 4. And there are so many good things to say about Marincess. Number 1, obviously, it's budget. You have Marincess Dive, which is the only card that you sort of need to invest in because of the Mako set, since everything got reprinted. There were a couple more expensive cards, and even right now, if you look at those higher rarities, there is a slight difference. So if you want to invest in a blinked up version of Marincess, you can do that. But still, you can only invest in the cheaper copies because why not? They're not all just random commons. You have a couple supers and stuff like that. So you can invest into all of these cards. And then you invest in the Marincess Dive, which is about $12. And you legit have a deck. Now, there is the engine of Bahamut Shark and Totally Awesome. And Totally Awesome is extremely expensive right now. But I still wanted to include this deck. Obviously, one card is not going to make it, so I'm not including it in the budget decks. And the second thing I want to say is, more than likely, you might have Totally Awesome already on hands. It's a really strong card and has been for some time. So if you ever played Paleo, if you played Prank Kids, if you played pretty much whatever, Toad has been a very good addition for the longest time. So when it got that reprint, it was cheap. You can't say it's always been expensive. So if you didn't get your hands on Toad at the correct time, I just want to say sorry. I know it's lame, and hopefully we get an accessible printing. So it is a card you need to invest in, but if you already have it on hand, then legit, you're just gonna get the Marincess deck for very, very cheap. So yeah, with all of that being said, I also think it's so nice because it has so much space for hand traps and any other tech card you might want to put in your deck. So that's why it's one of those decks that can really adjust to the meta that you're playing it in. And also it's just nice, the deck is just really strong and has some cool plays. When you do the field spell stuff, you equip everything. It's just I don't know, I really like it, and it is budget, so I would definitely advise you to pick it up if you're looking for anything budget that is actually going to carry you, because the deck is strong. So for the next one, I wanted to put Flunder. In my last video, if you saw it, I only mentioned it as like an honorable mention because Prosperity is such an important part of that deck, but it is expensive, obviously, because it's part of Prosperity. But I still decided to include it today because some people pointed out how Prosperity is not that necessary, and you know, that was wrong on my part. Like, I just immediately excluded Flunder, and that wasn't right because the deck is budget if you exclude Prosperity. And yes, Extravagance and Duality can help you. Like, most definitely. If you don't want to spend on Prosperity, you can build Flunder, and it is going to be cheap, it is going to be budget, and you can use Extravagance. I think with the Extravagance reprint, this was definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to Konami reprinting just good staple spell cards. So hopefully this happens to Prosperity as well. But just looking at the entirety of the deck, Ryza was expensive for a very long time, and then it received a reprint. And also looking at other stuff, the only couple expensive things would be the quick play spell card, and then I guess Empen is a bit more expensive than some other things in the deck. But if you invest into all of that, then the next thing you need to pick up would be Dimension Shifter. With Dimension Shifter, I kind of have similar arguments when it comes to Shifter and also Toad. You might have it on hand. It is a hand trap. It has been out for quite some time now, a couple years now, so you might already have a couple copies because, like, why wouldn't you get a playset of not necessarily a very generic one, because you can't play it in every single deck, but it was a promo, so more than likely you might have the Shifter already like laying around in your binder, and even if you don't, it's not that expensive, and it is an integral part of the deck. So if you're investing in Flunder, and legit the only thing you need to invest in would be the Shifter, the quick play spell card, and then, you know, a copy of Empen, or however many you're playing in the deck, I still think this should be qualified as a budget deck. And then looking at the actual power of Flunder, obviously from previous results, we can see that Flunder is quite dominant. Like, me personally, I'm not into stun decks. You already know by this point, you know, I mention it a lot on the channel, but still we can't deny the fact that even though Flunder might be annoying to go up against, it's still a very strong deck. You know, you have D-Shifter, which inherently just counters most of the meta, and then you have Barrier Statue, you have Empen, you have the Ryza Disruption. The deck is able to just consistently disrupt the opponent, as well as have consistency in itself because of the spell cards that you play, meaning the pot cards and the amount of copies, you know, you have of every single normal summon. Like, you can easily get your combos going because it is a one-card combo type of deck. So then you have extenders in the form of the field spell, and it's like, the deck is consistent, it's strong, and it's cheap. Also, if you're only starting out, you know, you might want to pick up a deck that's a bit easier to play if that's the way you want to go about it. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I just want to say that that's not something I necessarily condone, because I think you need to pick up a deck that's actually going to teach you something if you're just starting out. But if we leave that aside, if that's what you want to do, if you want to pick up Flunder, whether it be you're just started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or you've been playing for some time, you know, I'm not the one to judge. I legit have nothing to say against it. Like, just do whatever you want to do. I wanted to bring Flunder to your attention because it is cheap, as much as I don't like it. But that's besides the point. So, the next deck we're going to go into is going to be Phantom Knights. This one is not exactly as strong as the two previously mentioned, but I wanted to cover it simply because I think it's one of those rogue decks that can most definitely carry you if you build it properly and if you really learn it properly. It is like that with every single deck. Like, I think that if you pilot a deck to its fullest potential, more than likely you're gonna do well. But with a deck like Phantom Knight, I always felt like the deck is just very, very strong, but you need to build it properly because it has so many different extenders that can be played in the deck that you want to achieve the perfect consistency with it, and also have enough space to play a couple tech cards and hand traps, and still like manage to achieve, I should say, a good board. Because without Anaconda, I think the deck lost a lot of its power because there's not this one play you're gonna go for. But I think that slowly over time, people have started to deviate in a couple different directions. And if you look at Phantom Knights builds right now, you can find different options for yourself, and they are going to be cheap. Like looking at the extra deck, almost every single card in it is cheap. And even if you want to play, you know, this Xyz or that Xyz or whichever version you want to run, legit the only expensive card would probably be Utopic Future, like a Utopic Draco Future, like that one. Not the cheap version that you make first. So the Utopic Draco Future would be a bit more expensive. And like, I guess Zeus, Apollousa, like those staple cards, which you might already own. So the other ones, like looking at, I don't know, Time T3 Doer, Evil Swarm Nightmare, just random monsters that you can make in your combo, more than likely they are cheap. So if you want to pick up the deck, I think you're not going to spend a lot of money, even if you pick up every single possible extender and just have it on hand to build a 40 card version, a 60 card version, to just try things out with Phantom Knights, because I think the deck has a lot of potential, but it just needs to be explored to the fullest. So I wanted to mention it because it's also a hard deck to pilot, or to pilot properly, I should say. So it teaches you something as well. And like overall, I think is a good pick. Might not be the strongest one, but definitely budget and also challenging when it comes to actually learning it, building it, and all of that. So yeah, I would honestly recommend it. And then the two last ones, one of them is going to be DDD. So DDD has been cheap for some time now, but a couple cards were expensive. And then with the recent reprints in Ghost from the Past, the Second Haunting, a couple important parts of the deck were reprinted. So they are more accessible. Overall, a couple words on DDD. I've mentioned the deck quite a lot on my channel because I genuinely am a huge fan of it. It's hard to pilot, it's hard to master, but it is very, very rewarding. It got power crept a bit because some decks became that much more prevalent, but still, similarly to Phantom Knights and a couple decks I tend to mention on the channel, this is one of those that you can definitely learn like ins and outs of it, and I don't think people are going to be able to beat you. Like, if I'm being completely honest, if you invest in such a hard deck, in such a also strong and consistent combo deck, I think you're going to be very satisfied because it is cheap. And with the support, it got a much needed boost. And I think it most definitely can hang with some of the decks in the meta. And I guess the last thing, I know you need to play Baron if you really want to maximize the deck. And I also know Baron, of course, is expensive. But then again, you have a lot of different combos. You have a lot of different boards you can end up on. And you still have the trap card, the Xyz monsters. So everything that was the newly printed support and everything that the deck used to be, it's still mashed up in this one very strong pile. And as much as Baron is strong and, you know, nice to have, I still think it's not that needed if the deck inherently is also kind of hard to just play against because some people don't know it that well, and especially if you pilot it properly, like I keep saying. So you might want to invest in a deck like this because it's like very, very cheap. And then if you want, just save up and invest into something like Baron, which overall is a very strong staple monster to have. So yeah, that's why it's on my list, even though Baron is expensive. But yeah, for the last deck, I wanted to cover Mech. Circular is one hell of a card. Like, to be honest, I think this card is going to boost the strategy immensely. And overall, looking at the reprints, the much needed reprints that the deck had, with addition becoming more accessible, like overall Ghost from the Past was just a nice set when it comes to reprints. And just looking at the combos, if you looked anything up online, like the deck is genuinely scary. And I mentioned it a bit in the last couple of videos, so I won't spend too much time on it, but I definitely think Mech is a deck to look out for. And paired up with stuff like Heat Soul and just, you know, different cards, like you can do so well because it is like it requires some space for the main deck monsters, but then you also have a lot of space for hand traps and other stuff. So it's a strong, almost one card combo deck, and that's why it has the space that I mentioned, and that's very much welcome in a meta where you need to be able to just go up against a myriad of different decks because we are in such a diverse meta. So you really want to dedicate the flex spots to strong tech cards which you can actually afford in a deck like this. And yeah, like this Circular is just it's amazing. It's honestly so strong, and definitely just makes Mech 1000 times better, and most definitely deserving to be on this list because I don't want to cover just random cheap decks, but actually quite strong decks. Out of this entire list, the ones I would recommend the most would probably be Marincess and Flunder and Methmech. The other two might not be that strong, and they're also quite hard combo decks that you need to build perfectly and put a lot of thought into it. And the other three are a tiny bit more straightforward and also can afford to have a lot of tech cards. So yeah, hopefully this video was informative. I wanted to cover as many decks as possible. You know, pairing the last budget video with this one, I think you have a lot of options with the 11 decks that we covered. So yeah, let me know if there is anything that I maybe have missed, if there's another budget deck that you're maybe playing and looking forward to playing moving forward. And yeah, like I love doing budget content because I think it's so important to talk about it as well. Like not everybody is going to invest in the most expensive cards, and that's completely understandable. So as much as we can like help each other with sharing information, also in the comment section, like I said, if you have anything else to add, I would be very happy to read all of your responses. So yeah, I want to say thank you again for being here with me for the past year. I've been having the time of my life with creating content for you, and I'm very much grateful that you're here, that you've been so supportive, and honestly I can't wait for things to come, and I'm so excited to bring you amazing content. And yeah, I just want to say thank you one more time. So make sure to sub to the channel, like the video, check out all of the social media, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.